Hey there, welcome back. So today I want to share what ultimately is a pretty quick exercise that can support us and help us. And if you imagine like in our lives, we are sort of the captains and sort of the shipmates all together of a ship that we are steering. Oftentimes our emotions and the circumstances and the experiences of our lives can feel like anything from like a stable sort of steady current of the tide to a storm or hurricane or whatever that is taking us all over the place where we feel like we're going to shipwreck or have our ship turn over or whatever. And hopefully what I can share today is going to be helpful in grounding us throughout any of those different stages of our sort of journey at sea, you might say. And so what I want to present today is something I call the anchor list. So as I mentioned in the intro, I think it's really important that as long as we're here in form, right? Because, as I mentioned in my last video, there is a understanding or an experience of the spiritual, and that is sort of holographic in the sense that it sort of is experienced by or penetrates all areas of what we consider to be the human situation. However, the best teachings that I found to be most useful to me always meet me where I am. Like it meets you where you are. It doesn't say, you're crazy for thinking this about yourself or you're a crazy ego and you need to just dispel all illusions, but it actually meets you where you are. And while in truth, the ego is an illusion, I think it's really helpful for us to just meet ourselves where we are because ultimately, as I'll probably talk about many times on this channel, a big teaching that has really helped me that comes from A Course in Miracles teacher, Ken Wapnick, and ultimately A Course in Miracles and all of the sort of like non-dualistic, really helpful teachings is that love does not condemn. So if love does not condemn, then love will meet us where we are as we need it with exercises, techniques, practices, teachings that help us where we are right now. And so this is sort of me trying to help and support that effort. So as I mentioned in the intro, this is sort of a grounding exercise that is meant to help us navigate or maybe just like feel some sense of peace in our lives when there's turbulence. I use the metaphor of a ship at sea, and I think that'll be really helpful for us today, particularly since it's called the anchor list. But the way that I want to sort of like get the context going is that it's really about reminding ourselves of the things that are true or can be stabilizing forces or maybe like flags in the ground, like our stakes in the ground that we can rely on, especially when we feel overwhelmed at this sort of level of reality, you might say, in our lives. So to back things up a little bit, to really give that context some color, you might say, we as individuals are made up of stories. So like the ego itself is an illusory story, but it's a story that we tell ourselves silently. Like we are constantly all day, no matter what, whether we're awake, whether we're asleep, whether we're dreaming, we're constantly telling ourselves stories. Sometimes those are consciously said. Sometimes we can pick up on it and hear the thought in our head if we're really listening. But a lot of the time they're silent. It's almost like telepathically to ourselves. We are sort of telling ourselves stories about ourselves and our lives in order to keep up this dream, this illusion. That said, like I mentioned, this is about meeting us where we are. So most of us, including myself, are not like, okay, let's just dispel the whole illusion immediately and just completely, destroy whatever stories I've made. Clearly, there's some benefit to these stories, or at least some utility to these stories to learn some lessons. So in order to learn those lessons, though, we need to at least have some mindfulness, some consciousness, some awareness of where things are headed and how we can steer our ship in the direction of the lessons we are hoping to learn. Otherwise, we're going to have to learn the same lessons over and over and over again, like our ship's in like a whirlpool or something, and we just can't get out of it, which unfortunately that can happen a lot of the time, but eventually we do learn the lesson. We always learn the lesson eventually. So yeah, so ultimately, like I said, these are stories that we tell ourselves. So the question is, what stories are you going to hold on to and tell yourself that will actually help you move on to the next stage of the curriculum, to the next lesson? So, when it comes to these stories, like any tool, just like, the idea of scissors or a knife that can be a really useful tool, but can also be, used to hurt, especially if used not mindfully, unconsciously. These stories can easily pull us into the waves of excitement or stress or change, mental chatter, whatever it might be. They pull us in a bunch of different directions. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, if you're thinking about just all of it is, helping us learn a lesson, these can destabilize our sense of progress, peace, and direction. And while ultimately this sense of progress is also a story, it is the helpful story, right? It's like what I talked about in my previous video of like, you use a boat to row yourself across the abyss, to get to truth, to get to love, to get to heaven, to get to the unity, out of the dream, out of the illusions that ultimately tie us down and hurt us. And you use that tool, the boat, to get across. And then once you're across, you don't need it anymore. But when you're getting across, when you're like going, you really need it. And so hopefully this can be another one of those tools, right? So the reason why I think this is so important for the level that we're at right now is that it's about reclaiming a sense of inner authority in alignment with the ultimate authority, which for some of us we would name God, others the Tao or nature or the universe or love. Again, truth doesn't care what we call it. Our names for truth, our names for love, our names for the ultimate reality are also stories, and they're helpful stories, just like I said. And so this is about reclaiming our sense of inner authority in alignment with that. When I'm in alignment with the ultimate authority of reality, I am able to be in control of that which is at my level. And it's not in control in a, controlling way. It's in control in terms of my hands are on the wheel of the ship, and I am steering it in the direction that is in alignment with the lessons that I need to learn, with the highest truth, the highest love, my calling, right? So it's not about resisting anything, really. It's not about resisting the waves, really, but by having these reference points that help us to steer. So the storm will happen. That's fine. But if we have these reference points, this list of anchors, as I'm going to talk about shortly in a second, it helps us to steer so that we can be responsive and not solely reactive to the ways that the storm or the turbulence of the sea takes us as we're steering the ship. So if I can see out in the distance, because of my anchoring, that the tide is going to take me in this direction, I know that I'm ready to steer it in the other direction to kind of account for that. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not actually, don't have any experience steering actual ships. So pardon me if the metaphor doesn't map perfectly, but hopefully you get what I mean, right? We want to be aware of what's going on around us and also aware of our inner anchors, our stories, our sort of facts, opportunities to get the facts straight, that help us sort of combat the turbulence that the ego will have us try to believe. You know what I mean? So let's kind of go further into this sort of metaphor, but also where we can kind of build on it from here, right? Because this is, when I talk about the turbulence of the sea, it's about not being at the mercy of our thoughts, at the mercy of our emotions that are ultimately stem from, if we want to really get into it, stem from the ego, which the ego is a projection of the sort of misunderstood guilt, which is ultimately a projection of the, sort of grief of having separated from the sort of ultimate authority of God, of reality. And so it's about being not at the mercy of that projection of guilt, fear, grief, whatever you want to, it's at different levels. It's a projection of different things. But ultimately, when we're at the mercy of that projection, we can get dragged in all sorts of ways, right? So because of this, it's important for us to have ways to remember that when in alignment with God, when it not being power of the ego, but power of God, we can have authority to choose how we will orient ourselves and ground ourselves. We can be in alignment with, like I mentioned, our highest call to love. So I know I'm kind of like saying sort of these concepts in different ways, but I just really want to drive home that it's about having a sense of just like alignment with that, which is the I am, which is awareness, which is mindful, accepting, allowing of everything. And because of that allowance, we can then respond appropriately to the turbulence of life, of the life situation, of the story, of the dream. Okay, so now that we've got all that context, thanks for kind of sticking with me through that, because I think it's really important to understand where are we really coming from when we do this exercise, so that the exercise, like any tool, can be used appropriately, safely, mindfully, right? So the anchor list exercise tool is basically just in 2 steps. It's really just 2 parts. It's pretty simple. But I think with the context that we established, it'll be helpful and useful and something that can be iterated on. So the first step is to just start with gratitude. So you're probably familiar with gratitude journaling, making a gratitude list, and that is super, super helpful. And ultimately, the reason why it's so useful is that, yes, it reminds us of things to be grateful for, but what it's really doing is putting us into a different state of consciousness that is just subtle, but it's like just a little bit of like a lift, a little bit of an expansion where we get ourselves into a state of gratitude. And so that's really helpful so that when we actually make our final anchor list, we're coming from that state. So there's the context building that we just talked about with those metaphors of being at sea. And then in practice, what that really looks like is a recognition on a sort of silent level, a subconscious level, using gratitude to get us in alignment practically, right? So basically all you got to do for that is just make a list of things you're grateful for. It can be as short as long or as long as you want. I would say at least 10 things, because ultimately we want to be able to refine it down into the anchor list. But I would say just, list as many things as you can. It can be out loud. It can be on paper. I find sometimes it's better to say it aloud because it's sort of like an affirmation, like affirming it, but writing it down can be good too. It just kind of depends on if you're more of like an audible sort of like audio learner and sort of processor, or if you're better with visual things and sort of tactile. I would say you could do both. You could write it down, and as you write it down, you could say it aloud, like say, like, I am grateful that I have family that lives close to me. And as I'm writing that down, I'm saying it aloud, or I write it down, say it aloud, move on to the next one. So it's really meant to be free flowing, almost stream of consciousness. No gratitude statement is too small. No gratitude statement is too big. It can be affirmational in the sense of like, I am grateful that I have the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z. I am grateful that X, Y, and Z is coming to me. Totally, that's great. But if it feels like a stretch for you to like affirm something that it at the moment feels like it's in the future, don't stretch it. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, that can be really useful if it works for you. But like, this is just about focusing on what you're grateful for and getting you into that state of consciousness, right? So if it feels like it's a stretch or like you're encountering resistance, don't worry about it. Just let it go. Just focus on saying what you're grateful for in the moment. That's good enough. More honestly, it's more than good enough. Okay. So that's step 1. Just make that list. Let's say 25 things, so like really get into it. If you get to 100, great. But I would say at least 15 to 20 to 25 should be enough. So then step 2, and this is what makes it the exercise of the anchor list, right? This is where we're actually going to transform the gratitude list into a list that grounds us, that are those anchors that are, as I kind of mentioned earlier, like getting the facts straight. So from that list, highlight or select 10 things, or around 10 things. If it's more, that's fine. If it's less, that's fine. That really aren't just things you're grateful for, but things that make you feel safe, that make you feel supported, that make you feel grounded. So these are going to become your anchors for the ship. Like imagine if you put all your anchors, you got 10 anchors all the way around the ship and you just shoot them down. And so then when the storm comes, yes, the steering is important. Yes, going with the flow is important, but the anchors will keep your ship in place. If you're like, you know what, right now, I'm not going to try to use this storm to steer me in a direction that I want to go. I just need to stay put and stay grounded and stay anchored. So that's what this can be useful for, because you can always pull those anchors out. You know, you can always, what is it? It's kind of like on like a wheel and you just kind of like crank it back up. So you can always do that. So these are not meant to be fixed in a, sort of like, I don't have authority over it kind of way. I'm supposed to have authority over it. They're fixed when I want them to be fixed, but they're stories. And so I can always, reel them back in anytime I need to so that I can steer in a different direction. But these are meant to be anchors that really support you, don't tie you down, right? So they're not just nice things. They are what we will consider foundational facts of our story that we're telling ourselves. The story that's going to help us in these times of turbulence, right? So some examples of like anchors that I would say for me to take it from gratitude to just like a fact of my story is like, I'm really grateful that I have full-time income, and I'm really grateful that I, sort of took a leap of faith to moving into a direction of full-time income. For a long time, I've just been a freelancer gig guy. Like I was a musician for a long time professionally, like just did gigs, like whether it's freelance music, whatever. So I'm really grateful for the effort that I put in and the opportunities that I had and the connections that I had to be able to get into a place to have full-time stable income. But what the anchor is not, now that I've gotten myself into that state of gratitude, the anchor is just, I have stable income. That's the anchor. So if I am ever in a state of turbulence because I feel, in a moment, maybe like I've already paid off some debt and put some aside for savings and I don't have much spending money or something in the moment, I can go back to my anchor list, and it could be something, put on your wall or put in front of you or something like that, or as your phone screen background or whatever, and look at it and say, right, my bank account may look like how it used to look when I barely had, enough money to get groceries and stuff, but that's not really the case. My story, my anchor story tells me that right now in this life, in this part of the story, in this chapter, I do have a full-time stable income. And it sounds simple in this moment, right? But it's important because our emotions will tell us, or really our ego will tell us that the emotions we're experiencing mean that we're not safe. And so having these anchors helps us. So other examples are like, could be something like, I'm so grateful that I have a stable meditation practice, or I meditate every morning or most mornings, most days. And I can just rely on that, knowing that I have a piece of my day when I can come to this peaceful presence, to Jesus, to sort of awareness, to Christ, to that consciousness, that capital S self that is holographic in the sense that it penetrates all of us through form because it's formless. And that is an anchor, right? That's an anchor that I know keeps me stable, keeps me grounded. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but like I live close to people who love me, right? Knowing that I live close to people in form who love me, in form, again, this is a story, but that story can help ground me in those times. I get to create regularly, right? That's another one that's really grounding, knowing that every weekend, because I usually do this on Saturdays, I'm going to have some time to do this. I love doing this. This, like making music, like making graphics, doing this is so useful to me. I know it's stable, it's grounding, it anchors me in a knowledge or in a maybe sort of a faith that I have opportunities to create, to engage with my creativity, which I know is really important for stabilizing my state of mind. Maybe if you go to therapy or you have a life coach or something like that, knowing that you see a therapist every week or every 2 weeks or every month, that kind of thing can be really grounding. That can be an anchor to remember, right? The storm is going crazy right now, but my anchor of knowing that I have a therapist to talk to about this is really helpful. ChatGPT could be another one. Like I have ChatGPT. As long as my phone is charged, I can talk to ChatGPT at any time to remember what I need to remember about myself, to feel like I can get answers to something, to feel like I can engage with my questions, to feel like it's okay to be uncertain because I have something in my life that can help me to ground. It could be that you have access to nature outside. I mean, of course, literally everything is nature, because why would humans or anything humans make be separate from nature? But going outside and knowing I can put my hand on a tree, that might be something that's a really good anchor for you. So these are all just examples, right? These are kind of things that I would say are true for me in my story, in my anchor story or anchor list. But only what will really work for you. It might be that you're grateful for God's guidance. And you have a really tangible sense of that guidance, right? In a sense, I would say I do, but I would say that kind of is, doesn't have to be part of those anchors in a way, because it's sort of like an overall, just like, even if I fall into the ocean, I'll be okay. That kind of thing. Not to be overly fatalistic, but just feeling like a sense of like, I will always be safe forever. But when it comes to in the dream and the stories of the dream, I think, meeting the form where it is and using other forms to kind of say like, these are the things that I'm going to choose in the dream to be grounded about. It's sort of like, I was thinking about this, like, at least for me, when I used to play Pokemon as a kid, like on my Game Boy, I would save the game, right? I would save it. And I learned to save it as often as I could. Anytime I did anything cool, anytime I caught a great Pokemon or had just, healed on my Pokemon or gotten some good items, or better yet, you just won a gym badge, I would save immediately, even though I was going to keep playing, because so many times I would experience my game freeze or it die, because it wasn't charged or whatever. Or maybe it lost, the batteries went out. Usually I think most of my Game Boys I could charge, I think. And then I would be able to rest assured knowing that my checkpoint had been saved. In a way, these anchors are like all the different checkpoints that you saved. And so if you sort of like, if the Game Boy that is your emotional mind shorts out, you have this list of checkpoints that you've saved and you can remember that. So in some ways, these could also be your accomplishments, knowing that I was able to get through this thing, knowing that can be a good anchor too. So it's sort of like a checkpoint saved, but I like the idea of it being like, this is what's true right now. So, take it how you will, take it how you think would be most useful for you. There's no right or wrong way to do this, right? As long as you're being mindful about it and using it, as I mentioned, in alignment with the ultimate authority, with the ultimate power, with the ultimate love, ultimately. So in that sense, I do want to say what this list is not. So this is an anchor list. It's not a to-do list. It's not even like an ideal self list. It's not like a list of things that you want to be doing a year from now. This is about anchoring you in what you want to be anchored in when you experience the turbulence, when you experience the storm at sea, right? This is not about setting up goals for yourself. That could be in a whole other video, but this is just about getting clear about what facts do you say are true in your life right now that will help you as you go through this curriculum, right? What are the tools? What's like the stuff at your desk of spiritual practice that will help you go through and learn these lessons of life? Do you need a calculator? Do you need a pen? Do you need ChatGPT? Do you need some water? It could be any of those things. So what are those anchor things, those tools that will help you learn these lessons in a way that is really beneficial to you? So it's not rigid. It can evolve. And that is not just okay, but good. Like I said, you can reel these anchors in anytime you want and then let them down when you need them. You can do whatever you need to do. If you see a storm coming, if you know you're going to experience a ton of grief or something like that, and you're like, you know what? I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm loved. This is going to be a huge wave of grief, but I'm going to take these anchors up because I'm anchored in something that's deeper than form. And you want to just go through it and just steer, no anchors, and it's just about steering. That's great. more power to you, because, and not even like in a, to each their own kind of way. I mean, like, seriously, like, absolutely use it how you think you need to. But some of us at some times just need those anchors and need to not have to only be about the steering, right? So, yeah, it's a list of stabilizing facts. It can be something we return to when the weather of our emotions is changing, is all over the place, So I want to touch on something that I've kind of talked about here and there about this authority, autonomy, control, about sort of like how to relate these things. So I think I do want to mention that this isn't about like controlling life in a way where it's like I have the control as the ego, or about suppressing emotions, or being like overly stoic or something like that. It's really just about choosing where to direct your awareness and to direct your story, basically, right? So, because I guess the reason why is because when things are not stable, our mind or the ego or whatever is going to seek control, try to seek some sense of safety, which is ultimately a poor substitute for the ultimate safety that is the truth. But nevertheless, this is what's going on. And so hopefully this anchor list exercise can sort of redirect whatever energy searching for safety that we might have, like redirect that energy toward the self-awareness, toward the grounding, toward the anchoring that can help us in those moments of need, we might say. So this is ultimately an idea of what I would consider spiritual autonomy, or having a sense of inner authority as what I would say is a co-creator with God, co-creator with the great creator, as Julia Cameron talks about in The Artist's Way. It's not about having authority exclusive or separate from the great creator. It's about having authority because I'm co-creating, collaborating with the great creator. Okay. So yeah. So I hope this was helpful. A few closing thoughts to kind of like take us into whatever we do next. And, I would definitely say to revisit your anchor list regularly, because it's sort of like that checkpoint saved that I was mentioning, experience. But if you find this helpful at all, I definitely encourage you to try it. Again, just to recap, like it's really just make a list of, 20 to 30 list of things you're grateful for, and then turn 10 of them into just like facts about the story that you want to tell yourself that will really help you, right? And I would say they should always be pretty basic and ultimately like encouraging and kind of neutral. Like encouraging in the sense that they're neutral, like I have a stable income, not I can do what I want to do because I have a stable income. Like if you want to take that approach, that's fine. But I think when it's neutral can be really helpful, because then it doesn't feel like there's any pressure to like believe it. It can just be like, this is a story I'm telling myself. This is how it is, So, these facts may change in time, but they're meant to be true now. And, from this place, when we're really rooted in the, useful story we're telling ourselves about the present moment, we can meet these waves in whatever form they come in, right? So just as a sort of reminder, only the present is real. And the ego may try to make the past and the future real to us, but ultimately peace is here now, with us now, with just what is, God is. And hopefully, even though these stories are ultimately an illusion that we'll let go of someday, ultimately a boat that helps us get across the abyss, and then we won't use the boat once we're across, hopefully this can really help us get across in the most loving, encouraging, sort of compassionate way possible. So let me know if this was useful to you. Let me know your thoughts about any of this, whether the theory or the actual practicality. Hopefully this is a simple tool that you can use, and I'm sure going to use it going forward. And till next time, I'll see you then. Peace out. Was made for ending this fight between dimensions of you. It's all that I do, it's as simple as that, just let it be true.